Greetings, family. This is Cassandra Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates. So I am here, sitting in my living room, chillaxing. I don't have any clients yet, but I have myself set up to take clients on call. So, like I said a couple of weeks ago, this is not a temple service as per usual. This is me attempting to finish reading this book before the new year. So this is going to be a read today. We will start temple service. We will resume temple services after the new year. I'm just, trying to get it. I'm out here humping. You feel me? So, happy Sunday. Happy holiday season for those who celebrate the holiday season. Yes, we have the last full moon of the year happening in a couple of days. So yay for that. And let's prepare for that. And I'll tell you, I'm not gonna make any real digressions or like a huge intro like I did yesterday. But two things that I wanted to say today. One, I was on TikTok this morning. People sent me a barrage of TikToks today. And so I spent a long time this morning. It's easy to go into wormholes on TikTok. Greetings, Solis. Oh, greetings, Frank. It's easy to go on wormholes on TikTok. And the discussion of the day, the discussion for the last few days, hot on the lips of everybody is this thing that is happening or unfolding before us about Simone Biles and her husband. I'm not going to go deep into that, but I was sent a particular TikTok today by my daughter, again, about Simone Biles and her husband and these, this interview that he did that was so shameful. And the link, this is not about Simone Biles, I'll say. Okay. This girl who did this TikTok video, her name is Drew Afualo, I believe. Afualo, Drew, Drew, Afualo, Afualo. I think that's her name. But when I say the content of her video was great. I am so exhausted on us riding the fence in our position about how women should be treated and how Black women in particular should be treated. The only thing I'll say about that video, and I watched most of the interview, though it was sickening to sit through, is that, one, I've been seeing a lot of comments by both men and women, but more women than I care to admit, about he ain't said nothing wrong. This dude is a catch. At least he ain't in prison. At least he ain't a felon. At least he ain't got baby mamas. At least this, and this. But like, okay, so he might be rich and he might not have any felonies, but this is like a way to kind of excuse his behavior, his obvious hatred of Black women, And why do I say Black women? Because this girl Drew Afualo found receipts. I didn't even know there was receipts to find. I thought he was just a stupid dude, just an unintelligent, stupid dude. The way he talked was insufferable. It was insufferable, this dude and his lack of intelligence, right? But so I didn't even know there was no receipts to get. This girl climbed through all his shit, all his deets, found all his things, and his preference is white women. So all these pictures of this dude with all these different white women over the years, it made sense why he would behave and talk the way that he did to his wife, who is the only reason that anybody knows who he is. The greatest athlete in the history of the fucking world. And this man talked about this woman. And the thing was so many women were like, well, I mean, all about choice and this, that. No. We can't do that. We cannot behave as if just yesterday, the great majority of us suffered the exact same kind of trauma this young woman suffered from. It took years of us going through bad relationship after bad relationship to understand why our trauma was showing up as patterns in each one of these relationships. And then it took another many, many years for us to acquire the language to help us understand what the hell had happened to us in these relationships and this repetition of patterns. This girl is traumatized. And unlike us, where we had the luxury of keeping our traumas quiet, our trauma secret, our shame secret, this girl's trauma has been on full display most of her young life. And it came from everybody. She was being traumatized publicly just as much by Black folks as she was by white people. This girl, so even him diminishing and demoting and degrading her, she chased me. We've all done it. We have all been at some time in our life, if we honest, even if it was our young life, so traumatized by the opposite sex in our experience in our relationship to them that we too have pursued, because we too want the same thing everybody else wants. We want affection. We want validation in our partnership. Validation is not a problem. It's only when we have unresolved trauma that we seek validation in toxic fucking areas and toxic fucking ways. But I was just really disturbed by how many women, so-called conscious women, so-called, with it women, talking about this woman the way that they did. This girl, first of all, she's still young. Second of all, she is a dark-skinned Black woman with dark-skinned Black woman features who has been perpetually attacked and traumatized by the entire world, even as she's the greatest, even as she's the best. What she has constantly been told all her life is what we all been told, that no matter what we acquire, no matter what we accomplish, no matter what we do, no matter how we show up, if we are Black and female, we are not worthy. We are not valid. And we will be in a constant, perpetual state of trying to, quote, prove our validity to the world. This girl is monstrous in her talent. Effortlessly amazing in her abilities. Yet, this is what happens to her, for her bum ass husband to degrade her in public and her be so humiliated that all she can do is laugh it off. I have been there. You understand? So this girl, Drew Afualo, check her out on TikTok. I'll say about her, I've seen her in the past. I cannot listen to her for very long because her laugh just wrecks my nerves. I can't get by it. However, this morning I watched it, and her TikTok on the Simone Biles thing was spot on. But the reason I mentioned her is not even about Simone Biles. I wasn't trying to get up in that, but let me tell you what happened. I saw this girl, and I don't watch her regularly. My daughter loves her, but like I said, every video she laughs this laugh that's like nails on chalkboard for me. I can't do it. But today I watched the video, and it occurred to me, I'm always talking to you guys, and I talked to you guys when I read this book the other day about how it's been for a long time my internal debate about, and not just about YouTube, but even like being in the medical field. Like for years, I would go every year to Harvard. They have a convention that is sponsored by a nonprofit organization or an NGO called Unite for Sight. And so the the aim of the organization that Harvard partners with every year is to end preventable blindness in the third world, right? And so every year they hold this big giant conference at Yale, and they have a different theme for each year. The first year that I went, it was uh, the state of health in the so-called third world, right? The state of health in the third world. Greetings, everyone. Greetings, everyone. Phoebe, Asia, Balance, Elise, Ayan, Fix My Life. Everybody, greetings, greetings, greetings. Okay. So anyway, when I was going to Harvard for these conferences, and I was going as media. I was doing a radio show at the time called Colonialism is Bad for Your Health. And so I would go to these conferences basically for content for my show, to find people to interview for my show, to find content for the show, whatever. So anyway, the first year that I went was the most impactful because so many consequences, so many sequences of events happened that basically led to me going to this conference the first day. I didn't have time to check into my hotel room. I got straight off the train with my luggage, went right to the conference in my travel clothes, which is essentially about like what I got on now, like a sweatshirt. It was a Che Guevara sweatshirt and some jeans and some Converse and shit, and everybody's at 3,000 people in suit and ties and well dressed and all of this stuff. I was like, well, let me just tuck off in here in the back until we get an intermission or something. Tuck my luggage in the back. I'll be quiet. I'll be tucked off in the back. So until I can go back to my room, get myself better prepared and presentable, and come back. I'm getting to a point. So I didn't go, and the first big conference before we went into breakout sessions was so repugnant. The content, it was a panel discussion, and it was so violently gross. And the thing that was shocking to me about this panel discussion was there were 3,000 people. I'm not exaggerating, 3,000 people in this goddamn room, this auditorium. And the Black and POC, healthcare professionals, doctors, nurses, everybody from everywhere, all over the planet in this room. The people of color, you could count on maybe your hands and your toes. You feel me? Your fingers and your toes. It was, and so the content of the panel discussion was outrageous. How it could happen in a professional setting was beyond me, right? And I recognize, and I think a lot of women recognize, like, as a healthcare professional, that was my line of thinking during that time. I'm getting to a point, I promise, was that in certain settings, you have to, it is called knowing your target audience. It is called adjusting accordingly. So what we call code switching, in my mind, in the medical profession, right? When I'm talking to doctors and nurses and surgeons and NGOs and stuff like that, I have to clean up my diction, because what happens is any kind of slang or any kind of, explicative becomes the justification for tuning out the validity of the content. And I want you to fucking hear me. So if it means that I need to remove my longing for explicatives, you feel me? If it means that I have to remove the extra seasoning for my language, like, you feel me, right? Then I must do what I have to do to ensure that the content, though still valid with the explicatives and the seasoning, is not lost on your inability to hear my Black, nappy-headed, tattooed-faced, tattooed forearm self. See, everything becomes the issue but the issue, you see. So it becomes the excuse why you couldn't hear what the fuck I was saying, because I had fuck in there. And you're like, oh, and so everything else you lose. So when I was going to these conferences, I was very clear about what I was there for. So try as that, I can be disciplined, but who the fuck wants to? So I would clean up my language. And this first conference was brutal. And I was like, God, I look a mess. I've been traveling overnight. I haven't had a shower. I ain't got on no makeup. but nobody is going to say anything. Like, they had the microphones open. There were 4 panelists. They had the microphones open for people in this sea of 3,000 people to come to the microphone and ask questions or make comments. And nobody was going to the microphone, even as the shit that I heard was offensive to the 10th degree. But in the absence of melanated faces in there, there's only a handful of us, so they don't have to cater. They don't have to police themselves. They can just say the most ridiculous shit. On behalf of the so-called third world, this conference and its theme was the state of health in the so-called third world. They talking about colored folks. They talking about black, brown, and red and yellow people in the absence of black, brown, and yellow and red people. And the discussion was dumb. So I was like, okay, yes, I look a whole hot mess, but let me trick because this kind of shit cannot, honey. We gotta blow the lid off this shit. We cannot keep shit quiet. So I walked down there, and baby, when I say I was like a dragon and I lit the motherfucking stage on fire, the whole room erupted. When I say erupted, I asked 3 questions. And when I asked them questions before the panelists could even answer, the whole room erupted. People standing up like I had made a speech, child. I asked 3 questions. They were clapping like I had made a speech. But the problem was nobody had the courage to stand up and say what I was feeling in my body. Like, what the fuck is happening in here? You understand what I'm saying? That happened over and over and over and over again every year that I went. And so the reason I am talking about this with Yale and understanding the need to, in certain situations, to clean up my language to ensure, because I know y'all, because I know as soon as I'm black and female walking in the space, I can have straight hair in a business suit and tie, and y'all still are going to close your ears. So I know good and damn well my offensive ass walking up in there first thing in the morning in a Shake of our t-shirt, you understand, with my hair all over the place. Y'all wasn't about to try to hear nothing I was saying. So let me make sure that even as my physical presentation is not on par, that you understand exactly what it is I am attempting to communicate in my opposition to this madness you just spit on this panel, and didn't expect that anybody was listening. Everybody golf clapping and shit. Baby, I blew the stage up. I blew every room up, every seminar, every workshop, because we have to be in there. In the absence of us, we have to fight for us. I'm telling you, there wasn't 20 black people in that whole conference. I mean that. There wasn't 20 black people all weekend. It was a 4-day weekend. We running from room to room to room, trying to catch all the workshops we can possibly, the breakout sessions we can catch. There wasn't 20 black people in that goddamn room. And in the absence of us, they are planning our lives. So the reason I say that is because while still, I haven't done it in a long time, but I used to go to these medical conferences pretty often. But recognizing that there is very specific need to be deliberate in your articulations, especially when you're trying to win something. I was there to win something. I was there to get something. You feel me? Then, okay, cool, fine. But where my YouTube channel is concerned, and this back and forth that I've been having with myself and my committee for some time about whether or not I should really try to attempt to clean up my language. I did that too when I did radio. Because it was radio, it wasn't like this back then. This was in 2003 to 2008. It wasn't like this. So the censoring wasn't so hardcore and all of this stuff. However, because of the organization I worked for, I had to be very deliberate about my language and how I articulated things, whatever. I'm almost 50 now, and I'm at the stage where I do not give an absolute fuck at all. You understand? And so I was really concerned about that. I kept saying for years and years and years, YouTube ain't never going to monetize my shit. It ain't going to happen. YouTube ain't going to monetize my shit. How about I see this girl, see, full circle. This girl, Drew Afualo, talking about Simone Biles today. I do not follow her. I mean, she's okay. Her content is okay, but all the extra in between, she's for a younger crowd. It ain't for me, right? But today, I just happened to go ahead and click on the thing. This girl vindicated me today. This girl vindicated me today. I just want to say it. I just want to say that I'm so glad that I stuck to my guns, because this girl curses like a sailor. Worse than I do, if that's even possible. The girl curses worse than I do. You understand? Terrible. You understand? Explicit. You understand? And baby, she has a following of over 1 million people. She just got a book deal with what's his name? Crestlove's publishing company. She's been on hella TV show, being her full, authentic, nasty, potty mouth self, child. And I felt vindicated by this young girl, because I ain't cleaning up shit. I know that was a long way and a long story to tell you. I ain't cleaning up shit, and I feel vindicated. You understand? So thank you all. I've read a long list of people who have made contributions since October to the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence, which is the temple founded by myself. I am so grateful for those, and I will, I guess, be done in my digression. There was something else I wanted to say, but there is something else I want to say. Let me tell you why the contributions are so important. Like, first of all, let me do some housekeeping. Just so you know, in case you didn't know, especially for those of you who are not tuning in via YouTube, my YouTube page just last week finally met all the benchmarks to become monetized, right? So what that means is like, one, the easiest way that you can support is, I know it's annoying because I hate it too, but my favorite YouTubers, I do it because I know this is how they make money. Whenever a commercial comes on during my feed, please watch the commercial all the way through. Please watch the commercial all the way through. That's a way, without having to spend any money, you can support my page being monetized. Please watch the commercials all the way through. Okay, there's other things that are now available. Thank you, Shauna Michelle. There are other things that are available, or other ways now that I can monetize my page. Like, there are membership options. There's still stuff that I'm exploring. This shit is brand new to me. Like, there's membership options. There's some kind of thing with like a little star. I don't know what that is. There's other little ways that you can make contributions. You can like become a member. Like, there's a subscription membership thing. That's all live on my YouTube. So instead of just logging in, take a few minutes today, since it's a down day, or tomorrow, since it's a down day, and look through my YouTube channel for the methods with which you can support the monetization of my page. Thank you all, because that was a jack move we pulled. I think in June, I had like 300 subscribers. And from June to like October, we got the 1,000 subscribers that we needed to monetize the page. After the new year, when the hoopla of this madness is over, I'm really gonna like pivot hard to, because this page, let me just check and see. That's 7 p.m. Okay. Just wanted to see, because I told you I'm gonna have to keep my phone on because money be coming. You feel me? But anyway, what was I saying? Oh, this page had been functioning from the beginning as my personal page. So you'll see a lot of old videos that were literally, I was using YouTube as like an external hard drive, just dumping videos off my phone so I wouldn't lose them and I could go back later and download them or whatever. I eventually want to have an independent YouTube page. I might turn this into, like, let this be just the YouTube page for the temple, or my personal page. I don't know, but I'm eventually going to have at least another, maybe 2 other YouTube pages, because I really want to start doing the movie reviews regularly. That is something y'all have been kicking my ass about. Okay. I have gotten fucking 4 movie review requests this week alone, on top of the laundry list of movie requests that I have already devised to attempt to do for myself. This is just the beginning of my list. You see that? This is just the beginning of my list. And every day I am getting movie review requests from you. I want to say this. I want to say this unabashedly. I want to say this clearly. Okay, so while you may be entertained by what I do, that is not my purpose. I'm here for it. I recognize that I can be a little funny or whatever, but that's not what I'm here for. That's not what I am here for. Okay. Oh, thank you so much, Eon Fix My Life, for the donation. That's what's up. That's my first little donation like that, like live like that, where it shows up. That's awesome. Excuse me. Thank you for that. So, what I was saying is, listen, I tell y'all this all the time, and I want y'all to know that I am urgently serious. Okay. Everything that I do, everything that I have done, and I was clear about it. Everything that I do, everything that I have done is in some way connected to this call on my life, right? This need to be a willful and deliberate and conscious participator in the creation of the future that I want to see my daughter and my grandchildren and my great-grandchildren inherit. That's everything. So the reading of the books, while entertaining, it is purposeful. The watching between the lines, though entertaining, it is purposeful. And the reason I'm mentioning this in the context of the fact that I've been getting so many movie review requests is I watched a movie review today because I told y'all I'm getting ready to spring on y'all this Shazam movie review. And so I was taking some notes, and I watch other YouTubers who do reviews or who do like all kinds of stuff. I watch a Christian station who does movie reviews from a Christian worldview and perspective. I watch these things. I study because I'm trying to see the angles and the Easter eggs and then put my spin on what I am experiencing in these movies, because they all miss the boat, right? So I'm watching a review this morning, and this guy does these reviews that are 9 minutes long. They're heavily loaded with a whole bunch of stuff, but he's like, this happened, boom, 9 minutes. I've never seen a movie review of his that was more than 10 minutes long, right? But one thing he said this morning that I was like, yes, I have to start articulating this. I love doing movie reviews. I love doing deep dives of movies. I learned that from my dad as a little girl, right? To just like peel movies apart to see what the underlying message is, right? I love doing it. It is extremely time consuming. This guy got on here today and talked about the movie review that they did, which was like 9 minutes and some change long. And he said, though you can't understand it, this one movie review took us 6 hours to prepare. So please support our page. I was like, absolutely motherfucking right. I do not know if people think sometimes, or do not even consider sometimes, that, we have lives. And when we take time out of our lives, like lives outside of being here with you, the movie reviews are the hardest thing. That's why they don't come frequently. I think I have 4 or 5 movie reviews on my YouTube channel, because that shit is deep diving shit. That damn Suicide Squad review that I did, that shit took literal days of wormhole shit. My brain hurt after doing that movie review. I took 17 pages of notes for the Suicide Squad review. So I just want to tell you, I am here for it. Okay. Hey, Taib, what's up? I'm here for it. Send me all the movie review requests that you have, because listen, this shit is deep with these movies, with the idea that we are in the age of the new, like, when I talk to you guys about, I don't want to get too far off, but when I talk to you guys about it is revealing, we should be paying attention for today, how every time there was some leap in technological advances, those technological advances were used as weapons against oppressed people. Every single time there was some leap, some evolutionary leap in technological advances, though the first thing those advances were used to do was to harm or oppress already marginalized or oppressed people. When the first book printed with the printing press in Europe was the Malleus Maleficarum, the hammer of the witches, teaching men how to torture, capture, and kill witches, women. The first book, before they printed the first Bible, they printed a book on how to murder women. You understand? And the same thing with movies, the same thing with film. The first piece of cinema going to be produced after this leap that should have been a dawn of a new age and exciting, the first piece of propaganda produced when we were able to develop cinema and film was The Birth of a Nation, about how Black people won't know how to behave because they are newly freed and savages and gonna be to and fro wilding and stealing and raping white women. This was the first accomplishment with this leap in technological advances. And this age, this period that we're in is no different. This age and this period is no different. So when you're talking about technological advances of today, like AI, like and even, we're still on the very cutting edge of computer technology. It is, what is it used for? Surveillance and suppression. And so when I talk about cinema being a weapon, an instrument, movies, music, until we own and control the shit, until oppression ends in the world, those who oppress control the instruments of these technological advances, and they will always be used to maintain their position on top of us. And so we can't just be watching anything for entertainment's sake. If we're going to watch it with a discerning eye so that we can explain to others what they are witnessing. That way they can have an informed position that allows them to see in plain sight what's been hidden right in front of their eyes. You understand? So all of that to say, I appreciate it when you guys ask me for movie requests. And let me tell you, I write every single one down. As soon as I get it, I write it down. It is in this little book that I just showed you. Okay. What I will encourage you to do is when you have one of these movie requests, if you like one of the movie reviews that I have done, make a contribution, because these are hours of my life I am not getting paid for. I promise you. Like last night, I got home at 1:00 in the morning from doing massages in people's houses from 10:00 yesterday morning till 1:00 in the morning last night. So I promise you, you understand, you are not supporting some lavish life. You understand? So those things that speak to you, those things that win you, those things that resonate with your spirit, first of all, share them with others, because the mother is moving through us hella fast right now. I'm trying to tell you. First of all, share it. Second of all, support the work that I am doing. If you need to claim your support of what I am doing on your taxes, you can do that. The Temple of Evolutionary Emergence is a religious 501c3. So if you need the paperwork to be able to claim your donation, your contribution on your taxes, all you have to do is email me and I will get you that paperwork. releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. releaseheartcenter@gmail.com. But know that anytime you send money, it is supporting the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. Okay? Now, those are my disclaimers, I think. I think that's all of them. Now, for those of you who do not know or have not been following, for the last several weeks, I think we started in October, I have been reading this book, Pure Lust, Elemental Feminist Philosophy by Mary Daly. It's game-changing. We got, let's see, we're on page 342 today. We have, child, we're going to finish this book this week, okay? We're going to finish this book. non-chapter 13. Okay, so yeah, we're gonna finish this book. We probably finish this book in a few days if I can be disciplined. Yes. Okay, so we are on page 342 and the book ends at page 411. So I think in maybe 3-4 days we can finish this book. Okay, so for those of you who've been tuning in, for those of you who have the book, greetings, my Amy. For those of you who have the book, you feel me? You can follow along. For those who don't have the book, get your life right. Because as soon as the new year starts, like I said, I think the first Wednesday, probably the second Wednesday, honestly, the second Wednesday of the new year, we're going to resume our book club discussion around this book. And yeah, so that's it. So thank you for walking with me through my little intro, and we will get started from where we left off yesterday. So for those of you following along, we're on page 342. We are the third paragraph down on the section called Focusing and Centering. When a woman is deeply in touch, you know what? Let me get something. Let me get a swallow before I get started, okay? Because I said a lot, and now I need to wet my throat. Okay. When a woman is deeply in touch with her creative powers, her powers of meta patterning, she can, of course, recall other times of feeling at a distance from these powers and from this kind of activity. The presence of her meta patterning self accentuates her awareness of the alienation she experienced in times of foreground fixation. She may, at these peak moments, be able to acknowledge the alienation of normal times during which she could not fully experience her own experience of alienation. She may then ask herself in astonishment where she was at those other times when, it seems, she had fallen away from her center. Isn't that what we just talked about in the overview? She had, in fact, been dragged away from her center by the fragmentation of foreground living, that is, dying. The process of dislocation, splintering, however, may have been subtle and subliminal. Sometimes, therefore, a woman will describe her experience of being connected once more with her meta-patterning presence as suddenly coming home again after an unexplained and inexplicable absence. Meta-patterning can take many forms. The activities involved are multiform. For example, traveling in a foreign country, riding a bicycle, being engaged in a spinning discussion of ideas, walking on the beach. The process of writing a book of feminist philosophy can be a useful illustration. This is particularly so because the effort of meta-patterning is sustained over a somewhat lengthy period of time, and because the process itself of meta-patterning is the object of attention. So then a woman may be in the process of writing a book, an activity that requires telic centering and focusing. In the course of this prolonged activity, she assimilates all kinds of events into the writing process. The book she is writing participates in the deep purposefulness of her living. Her lust to write this particular work becomes part of her belonging, and writing it is one dimension of writing the book of her life. Yes. Oh, yes. It is a metaphor of the journey into meta-being. The focus required for bringing forth a work in this dimension and of these dimensions encourages the writer into a state of heightened awareness. Many apparent coincidences then begin to happen. Come on in, Mary. For example, although the author of this book does not often watch television, she turns on the television set one day just in time to see or hear a news story that evokes a whole chain of metaphors. Or again, she is thinking about four sister Elizabeth Cady Stanton and wishing she had a particular piece of information at her fingertips. A few minutes later, she opens her mailbox and finds that a publisher has sent her a complimentary, unsolicited copy of a book on Stanton containing just the information she had wanted. Oh my God, yes. Yes. Moreover, she just happens to open the book immediately to the right place. Or again, in the course of a telephone conversation, a friend mentions an article that is exactly what is needed to support the argument she is developing at that very moment. Y'all, listen, the sensory aliveness. The sensory aliveness. Yes. The sensory aliveness that accompanies such a process is complex and gynesthetic. A typo turns out to be the truly accurate and subliminally intended word. This aliveness is a consequence of deep telic focusing and centering. Even the tedious distractions of daily life can sometimes be assimilated into this process by the telic principle. A boring committee meeting occasionally can provide material for radical analysis. A, a trip to the supermarket can suddenly supply a missing clue. Listen, for those of you who watched the live reading yesterday, okay? Let's see. For those of you who watched the live reading yesterday, is this not what I was talking about exactly? Damn near verbatim, and it was in my intro. It wasn't even about the book, about how this sequence of events that happened to me this past Sunday, and the necessity of us being keenly aware, even in our frustrations, even in our wrongdoings, because I was telling y'all this whole story about how the goddess was whipping my ass on Sunday because I was hard-headed and disobedient, but she was still saying all along, still be aware. There's a message in it. There is a blessing in it. There's something you need in this moment. What in this interaction with this human am I supposed to be learning? What in this interaction from this situation am I supposed to be gleaning? And it's always there. It's always present. The only factor has been that we have not been present. It miracles, it magic, it lessons, it blessings are always present. The only thing that has been different in our lives is we have not always been present to witness, to receive, to understand, to be clear when those things are showing up in our lives. Here she is talking about the same thing that she calls sensory, propagated by sensory aliveness. She says a trip to the supermarket can suddenly supply a missing clue. The presence of the creative telos then keeps a woman fiercely focused. Since the author here described is a radical feminist, she is involved in the creative communal process of decoding the prevailing codes and of creating out of her own code, that is, meta-patterning. The material for her search, therefore, is everywhere. Okay? All the time. Yet the forces of fragmentation lie in ambush. Come on in the room, Mary. Come on in the room. Always looking to sabotage a bitch. Listen, yet the forces of fragmentation lie in ambush, child. As dragons, as gorgons, women must guard and foster the flame of telic focus. For poor women, for women of color, and for others whose individual circumstances are particularly oppressive, the struggle against the fragmentation of energy that brings physical disease and psychic paralysis is often unspeakably hard. Come on in. For all women, particularly in times and places of extreme repression, the creatives, let's see. The creative telos within the self is in conflict with the agendas of the Sado state. Some counterforce is provided by the communal telos of the feminist movement, and the constant weaving of this net of knowledge and commitment is both the primary act and the necessary condition for the macro mutation that is the elemental metamorphic movement of women. The soul as metaphor for the telic principle. One traditional way of naming the principle of telic focus has been to call this the soul. Shrewds can use this as a starting point for our analysis. Since my intent is to wrench this concept out of its traditional context, using it in a agnostic context, I am employing it is not simply as an analytic concept, but also as a metaphor. Soul, as springboard word, then refers to an animating principle of an organism. Specifically, it means the substantial form of a living body, as this is understood in Aristotelian philosophy. Soul, then, as the word is used here, is not intended in a Platonic sense, as if it were a distinct entity loosely connected with the body or imprisoned in the body. Excuse me. Or imprisoned in the body. Certainly, I do not mean it in any sort of Cartesian sense, as if it were mind or res cogitans. It's a Latin word, vaguely connected with matter. Rather, I use the word soul to mean an animating principle that is intimately united with and present to the body, in a union that traditionally has been called a hylomorphic union. According to this theory, in human beings, the intellectual principle is united to the body as the body's form. To speak of the soul in this sense, then, is not to convey the naive dualistic notion that soul and body are two united entities. The soul, conceived as the animating and unifying principle of the organism, is the radical source of life functions and activities. It is the source of telic centering, of the purpose of the purposive of the these words the purposiveness of the organism. Jeez. The soul, understood in this tradition, is wholly present in each part of the body. It is not a mere quantitative whole. An example of the latter would be a house, which is composed of foundation, walls, and roof. Obviously, the entire house is not in each of its parts. Moreover, the soul is not just a generic or logical whole, as a whole definition is made up of all of its parts. Rather, it is the potential whole. Explaining this concept, Aquinas wrote that the whole soul is divided into virtual parts. That is, the whole soul, quote, this is Aquinas, the whole soul is in each part of the body by totality of perfection and of essence, but not by totality of power. With regard to sight, it is in the eye, and with regard to hearing, it is in the ear, and so forth. End quote. Since this concept of unity of essence at the root of the multiplicity of parts and powers was not comprehended by all philosophers, Aquinas had to refute the position that besides the intellectual soul, there are in man other souls essentially different from one another. This seemingly simple position, namely that there are not many souls in one person, but rather one soul, wholly present everywhere within that person, can be a metamorphic springboard for metamorphosing women. It can function as an aid to the Amazon seeking the meaning of our belonging in the face and faces of the fearful fragmentation of women that is inflicted in the fatherland. Some of the implications may be more obvious if the searcher substitutes the word self for soul, thereby constructing the statement, quote, there are not many selves in the woman, but rather one self, wholly present in that woman. I am not asserting here that the self and the soul are precisely equivalent terms. In fact, they are not. My point is that One obvious consequence of the idea that a woman has one soul wholly present in all of her, quote, parts is that there is an essential integrity at the very core of herself. Belonging implies the unfolding, the realization of this inherent integrity. It is realized as a woman, becomes wholly present in all of her activities. The phenomenological manifestation of this integrity and pervasive presence of her soul is a radical consistency in her behavior. She does not seem to be one person one day and someone else the next. Oh, this is not to say that she lacks complexity in the variety of skills, activities, and experiences. Quite the opposite in this case. She manifests a high degree of differentiation. Moreover, she is spontaneous. Mary, come on. Listen. She does not seem to be one person one day and someone else the next. That is not to say that she lacks complexity or a variety of skills, activity, and experiences. Quite the opposite is the case. She manifests a high degree of differentiation. Moreover, she is spontaneous. This is possible because her energy is focused. It is not dissipated in the maintenance of masks, of fragmented false selves. Oh. Ooh. Listen. Splintered persona parading on the periphery of herself. Listen. The unfolding realizing of this integrity is being beyond such reified beings, the solidified pseudo-selves. It is the participation in meta-being, the lust for this intensely focused ontological activity or belonging is the lust for happiness. Next section. Souls and holographs. The concept of the unity of the soul, as presented in Aristotelian philosophy and developed in the doctrine of Aquinas, cannot easily be dismissed as completely absurd and irrelevant. To one who has long been familiar with this doctrine, it is both fascinating and funny to find contemporary scientific thinkers using language that in some ways is reminiscent of this idea when they write of the universe and of the mind as holograms. Child, let me just tell you. The more that we think we are moving forward, the more we are thrust backwards. According to David Bond, for example, who often uses the holographic analogy, the information of the entire universe is contained in each of its parts. As Larry Doty describes holograms, quote, a hologram is a specially constructed image which, when illuminated by a laser beam, seems eerily suspended in three-dimensional space. The most incredible features of holograms is that any piece of it, if illuminated with coherent light, provides an image of the entire hologram. The information of the whole is contained in each part, end quote. Doty, and others before him, asks whether, as a part of the universe, we have holographic features ourselves that permit us to comprehend a holographic universe. Stanford neurophysiologist Carl Pribom has answered the question in the affirmative, proposing the hologram as a model of brain function. Putting together the ideas of Boehm and Pribom, Doty suggests that the brain is a hologram, quote, that is a part of an even larger hologram, the universe itself, end quote. The holographic analogy is, of course, just that, an analogy. It has provided a language for these scientists to speak of an entirely to speak of an idea of the mind and of its relation to the universe that is really not entirely new. Comparable themes have recurred in the history of philosophy. Like I said, the more we think we move ahead, the more we are thrust backwards, child. Comparable themes have recurred in the history of philosophy. Bearing this in mind, Brewsters may wish to use holograms and holographs as variant metaphors pointing to integrity and wholeness. This is not to suggest that contemporary scientific jargon legitimates the classical philosophical language concerning the soul, for example. It may be, however, that the holographic metaphor can render more accessible some of the potentially helpful concepts that are contained and captured within the context of philosophical treatise. The holographic metaphor, moreover, as applied to the idea of the soul, can suggest a telic centering principle, which is an unfolding potential whole, a principal whole, one that is changing in harmony with the universe. Prudes can use this combination of metaphors to point to the internal source of the unfolding integrity of metapatriarchal women. Such integrity is manifested in the whole spectrum of a woman's activities and characterizes her presentiating presence. Communication beyond the sales of sickness. Since metamorphosing women are gynecological, we do not evolve or mutate as isolated units, nor do our powers develop in isolation from each other. Recalling the metaphor of the hologram, we reflect upon the fact that, quote, any piece of it, if illuminated with coherent light, provides an image of the entire hologram, end quote. Women who are realizing any of our powers, that is, illuminating such powers within the coherent light of our own reason, find that this process implies realizing the telic principle, soul, in its integrity and its entirety. Metamorphosing women are unfolding as whole, intellectual, passionate, sentient selves as we move out of the numbed state. No other than holistic change is desirable. To speak of it another way, this mutation is organic. The powers of Crohn's evolve in harmony with each other, in communication with each other. David Bakken discusses communication on a biological level in a way that can be helpful for the analysis of metapatriarchal processes. After distinguishing conscious communication between two persons from internal communication that takes place when something previously unconscious becomes conscious within an individual, he discusses internal biological communication. This my shit right here. I love the scientific jargon. Okay, let's go. Quote, within the human organism, there are varieties of forms of communication evident when what happens in one part of the body affects what happens in other parts of the body. There are numerous mechanisms in such internal communication, the neural and hormonal being particularly conspicuous. The mechanisms are remarkably diverse. The fact that communication takes place by whatever mechanism pervades all biological phenomena, end quote. Let me take a note really quick. Hold on. Okay. All right. The reduction of such internal communication results in disease and death. This is my language. This is my language. Okay. The reduction of such internal communication results in disease and death. Identifying this anti-process as decentralization, Bakken discusses the lack of communication in cancer cells. Quote, it turns out that the cells of cancer, which are radically and manifestly removed from the telos of any higher level of the hierarchical order, are precisely those cells which are distinguishable from their cellular counterparts by a gross inability to communicate with other cells, as indicated both by their growth behavior and by their lack of ionic transfer. Oh my God! Damn! Oh. Listen. I'm not going to go into my deep dive, but just let me say, this idea of what the true nature of cancer is, especially as it relates to a 5 elements theory worldview, which I have as a practitioner of 5 elements theory in Chinese medicine. I have talked about this concept of cancer within the concept of 5 elements and yin yang theory, and what this means and what it looks like politically and socially in the world. I've talked about this many times. So what you need to do is go back into the various videos that I have talked about this exact very thing, where this guy, this scientist, is saying that these cancer cells, what have I always said about cancer cells? They are self-forgetting that they are self. They are self-forgetting that they are part of the whole. They are self-forgetting what its function is, how to behave in the greater good, in the interest of the greater good of the whole. That's what cancer cells are. Cancer doesn't, it's not like a a virus or bacteria or some freaking, protozoa or something that comes from outside and makes you sick. Cancer is a cell gone rogue, begins as a singular cell gone rogue for whatever reason, and forgetting who it is, what its function is, who it is within the context of the group, right? This is just a different way of saying what I've been saying to you guys for some time, that the cell itself is radically removed from the whole. It doesn't see itself as a part of the whole because it doesn't remember its function, its behavior, its job, how to perform, right? And in this removal from the group, right, it forgets how to communicate with the other cells. Okay? Nags are very much aware of the gross inability to communicate, which characterizes those who manufacture and maintain the imprisoning cells of snooldom. Those who construct and sell these cells, homes, schools, hospitals, doctrines, myths, etc., are precisely those who cannot communicate in biophilic and ontological dimensions. They attempt, however, to invade and manipulate those whom they imprison and poison. And this predatory PR impedes elemental communication. The result, of course, is a sick social organism and a widespread sickness unto death among members of that society. Hold on, I need to take another note. Bakken reminds us that a degree of telic decentralization is essential underlying is an essential underlying characteristic of the diseased organism. Metamorphosing women are determined to leave the diseased organism of the fatherland. The way out is precisely telic centering and focusing, which implies quantum leaps of conscious communication within ourselves, among each other, and with the universe. This consciously willed, centered unfolding implies macroevolution. Macroevolution. Having affirmed the Aristotelian doctrine of the soul as one viable starting point for discussion of our transformation, soothsayers will assess some of its liabilities as well as its assets. There is, first of all, the problem of its dualism. We have seen that the dualism of Aristotle and Aquinas was not merely a crude belief in form, soul, and matter, as if these were two different things. Rather, these were understood to be intimately connected principles of a living creature. There is hardly a more abstract concept in the history of philosophy than Aristotle's notion of prime matter, which was by no means believed to be sense perceptible, but rather was thought to be knowable only through a complex reasoning process. Yet dualism, however subtle, is recognized as inadequate by agnostic critics for naming the reality of ourselves. It is more in accord with the experience of women breaking free of femininitude to view soul and body as ways of talking about different aspects of the same self. Moreover, there are more than two aspects of such experience. Words such as spirit and aura, for example, name other aspects of self-definition, as does elemental being. As elemental being. Nags also criticized the essential unchangeableness of the Aristotelian soul. Come on, I told you they hate evolution. It is true that change was believed to take place on an accidental level. The intellect, for example, could acquire new knowledge. In the view of Aquinas, the essence of the soul is something like a root or source of many faculties, which are distinguished from each other by their acts and objects. The powers flow from the essence of the soul and are interconnected with each other. The activities proceeding from these powers of the soul, thus conceived, were understood to bring about individual and social development. No matter how highly these faculties are developed, however, according to this tradition, this brings about no essential change in the individual or the species. The worldview of Aristotelianism then was static and non-evolutionary. Come on in, Mary. It was perhaps a glimmer of intuition and yearning for more than this stasis that prompted the Christian doctrine of grace. Especially the doctrine of sanctifying grace. The latter, conceived as supernatural life infused into the soul, was believed to make possible a heightening or intensification of the soul's spiritual capacities, so that these could attain higher levels or dimensions. Unfortunately, the higher levels all converged boiled down to God. The intimations of quantum leaps beyond the prevailing static state were potted into a belief in a supernatural static state, the eternal stagnation of the blessed. Hags find this kind of eternal retirement plan ineffably resistible. Dismissing Christian supernaturalism as the kiss of death, we catch our breath and return to the Aristotelian concept of the soul, considering other aspects of this theory. The treatment of sexual differentiation, for example, is another important topic. although seemingly not very important to Aristotle, for sexual difference is considered accidental to the human species. Although to the uninitiated, accidental may sound like a joke term, it was intended seriously. Taken in this context, it did not mean happening by chance or causing injury. Rather, it was intended to convey that the difference of gender is non-essential, that it does not change the species of individuals. In other words, women were considered to be human in abstract theory, though not in the actual society legitimated by Aristotle. That is, women were said to belong to the fixed species called man. Metamorphosing women are not flattered, but rather are horrified at the idea of such belonging. Moreover, this experience of such a woman is that she does not belong. Her erraticism essentially implies breaking the molds of the fixed species. Her psychic and physical living requires macroevolution. Macroevolution is defined as, quote, evolutionary change involving relatively large and complex steps as transformation of one species to another, end quote. Such evolution is now intended with varying degrees of explicitness by many crones. Metapatriarchal women experience ineffably ineffably accidental our connection with the species that has planned and executed witch crazes, death camps, slavery, torture, racism in all of its manifestations, world famine, chemical contamination, animal experimentation, the nuclear arms race. This differentiation is affirmed by a species of conscious choices. Metapatriarchally moving women not only experience now, but continue to choose to develop our differences from those who consciously and willingly perpetuate these horrors. And we recognize these differences as not merely accidental, but rather essential. The traditional concepts of species, especially of the human species, does not adequately encompass the differently oriented lives supposedly contained therein. I refer primarily to its grotesque blurring of differences between those whose intent and behavior is radically biophilic and those whose desensitized, decentralized, soulless, and berserk disorientation manifests gross inability to communicate and fundamental enmity towards life itself. Child, that was a whole word. Damn. Alice Walker has expressed an almost inexpressibly enraged awareness of these differences in her article, Nuclear Exorcism, first delivered as a speech at an anti-nuclear arms rally. After reciting a curse prayer that was collected by Zora Neale Hurston in the 1920s, Walker discusses the hope for revenge that she believes is to be at the heart of people of color's resistance to joining the anti-nuclear movement. She writes, and quote, and it would be good perhaps to put an end to the species in any case, rather than let white men continue to subjugate it and continue their lust to dominate, exploit, and despoil not just our planet, but the rest of the universe, which is their clear and oft-stated intention, leaving their arrogance and litter not just on the moon, but on everything else they can reach, end quote. After presenting a strong argument for fatally irradiating ourselves and for accepting our demise as a planet as a simple and just preventative medicine administered to the universe, Alice Walker decides against passive acceptance of extinction. Quote, life is better than death, I believe, if only because it is less boring and because it has fresh peaches on it. In any case, Earth is my home. Though for centuries, white people have tried to convince me that I have no right to exist, except in the dirtiest, darkest corners of the globe. So let me tell you, I intend to protect my home, end quote. I suggest that the decision not to allow nuclear maniacs to put an end to the species logically implies rejection of the idea that there is a human species. Oh shit. Ooh, listen. Yep. Did y'all just hear that? She said, I suggest that the decision not to allow nuclear maniacs to put an end to the species logically implies the rejection of the idea that there is a human species. The gynocidal, genocidal, biocidal aggressors whose lust is for destruction are deciding in one direction. It is possible to decide in other directions through the consciously willed and continual affirmation of ongoing life that is pure lust. This lived decision, as it is carried out in everyday events, constitutes not only more than an accidental difference, it is also greater than a specific difference. It renders the old philosophical concept of species obsolete, especially as a tool for conceptualizing and naming the being of biophilic creatures. Such ones cannot be confined to any static species, for our essences are changing and meta-patterning. When I write metaphorically of the souls of women as our telic focusing and meta-patterning principle, then I am not restricting the term to express the classical Aristotelian idea of substantial form determining an individual as a member of a fixed species. For such a species can conceivably contain and encompass other members whose telos, if the privation can be designated by an affirmative name, it is antitelos, that is, ultimate destruction of meaning and purpose. Indeed, the concept of such a species is contradictory, nonsensical. It would attempt to embrace creatures whose conscious behavior is wholly oriented in opposite directions. Yet the term soul can be heard with a third ear by one who listens in an other context. Springing off from the Aristotelian structure and from the language of modern science as well, the spirited searcher may speak of the soul not as that which confines an individual within a species, but rather a principle of uniqueness and diversity. Okay. Since metamorphosing women can view our bodies as transmutable to and from energy, the soul can be seen as the centering principle of this energy and gynergy. It is, as the ancients believed, the form of the body that is translated by wanton, wandering women to mean the meta-patterning principle through which we direct our shape-shifting and transfiguration mutation. This telic principle of uniqueness and diversity by no means has the effect of undermining unity, manifested in community, commonality, and bonding. Rather, it expands and intensifies the possibility of living the realities designated by these words. The deep connections that are rooted in one's individuality as an intentional creator of her being are more significant than are accidental connections in time and space, that is, of geographical and or temporal proximity. They are more radical even than familial, ethnic, and class ties, and ties of religious and educational background. To affirm this connectedness that is rooted in self-creation is hardly to overlook these other ties in all their complexity and depth. It is to begin to understand that these givens in the context of metapatriarchal becoming. The confrontation and exploration of the effects of these bonds of backgrounds has been an important concern of many feminists in the late 70s and in the 80s. Crones are also remembering a more radical background of diversity and connectedness that moves women into metamorphospheres. Bonding in relation to the final cause, the cause of causes, is focused upon where we are going. It is focused also upon where we came from in the most radical sense, for it is rooted in elemental origins. This bonding of women as deeply connected with our final cause takes place in a world of vibrations, of resonances, of ribbons of rhythm weaving through rivers, sands, trees, winds, flames, and seas. Our thoughts respond to the music of plants and animals, oceans and stars. Women sense too that animals and plants respond to our thought forms, that nothing is done in isolation. We are participants not only in what is commonly called the dance of life, but also in what prudes might prefer to call the prance of life. For macroevolution, we recall for macroevolution, we recall requires relatively large and complex steps. This is especially the case as we continue to transform from one species to another. The intensity and immensity of individual women's steps, our prancing meta-patterning of individuation, augments our capacity and lust for participation. The lusty longing for ontological participation is an intrinsic aspect of belonging. It is a longing to live in connectedness that already is, but is not yet realized. Realizing such ontological participation requires conjuring meta memories, the memories that aid our prancing, that spring and bound into deep past, thereby carrying our vision forward. I'm going to read for 8 more minutes. Belonging and meta memory. Women's yearning for experiencing our ontological connectedness with all that is elemental implies a longing to mend, to weave together the elemental realities that have been severed from consciousness, that is, forgotten. The deep significance of forgetting and remembering is suggested in Greek myth. According to Hesiod, Lethe, forgetting, is the daughter of Eris, strife. It is clear that the amnesia of women is in large measure the product of strife and conflict. Hold on. Sorry, hold on. Come on. Of strife and conflict, okay? From the earliest beginnings of our lives, all of the agents of patriarchal patterning work unceasingly to destroy women's elemental wildness. The suffering involved in the struggle to survive this battering certainly induces forgetfulness. There is much more to be understood about deep forgetfulness, however. As we have seen in Greek mythology, Nemosine, I think that's her name, Nemosine, the goddess of memory, was the mother of all art. Mnemosyne was the goddess of memory, was the mother of all art. Poetry, then, was the child of memory. Reflecting upon Plato's banning of poetry from his ideal state, Ernest Saskill recalls that since that philosopher was concerned with planning the future rather than evoking the past, he chose to impose a taboo upon memory in its most potent forms. Comparing the story of Ulysses' strategy for withstanding the irresistible song of the sirens with Plato's banning of the poets, Saskill reminds us that the profound fascination of memory of past experience with its promise of happiness and pleasure poses a threat to the kind of activity, planning, and purposeful thought and behavior encouraged by modern Western civilization. Whoo-wee! Oh my God. Shit. Unfortunately, Saskill does not have the very clear intimations of what it is about deep memory that promises happiness and pleasure. Nor can he really say what it is exactly about the kind of purposeful thought and behavior encouraged by modern Western civilization that makes it radically inimical to such memory. Metapatriarchal women, however, are discovering what sort of memory is so potent, so promising, so threatening to modern civilization's purposeful thought and behavior. Nags nag each other into recurrent awareness of what is wrong with the purposes of the memory-hating society. We know that truly focused purposefulness is rooted in deep memory, which we might now call meta-memory. For this is beyond and transformative of ordinary memories, and it is a source of lust for happiness, that is, belonging. Crones, therefore, are keenly cognizant of the urgency of the task implied by belonging itself of overcoming our amnesia. For as long as vaster expanses of meta-memory still elude us, the energy of our lusting is slowed down, potted, deflected. Clues for our memory searching can be gleaned from Satchel's analysis of childhood amnesia. Quote, the categories of schemata of adult memory are not suitable receptacles for early childhood experiences and therefore not fit to preserve these experiences and enable their recall, end quote. Developing this thesis, Satchel points out that the inadequacy of the Freudian assumption that a repression of sexual experience accounts for the repression of nearly all experience of early childhood. Rather, the problem of amnesia is also associated with the fact that there is a quality and intensity typical of early childhood experience that cannot be contained in the adult's categories for retaining memories. Muses hardly need to be persuaded of Satchel's point that the average adult memory is incapable of reproducing anything that resembles a really rich, full, rounded, alive experience. As he points out, quote, even the most exciting events are remembered as milestones rather than as moments filled with the concrete abundance of life. Woo! Adult memories reflect life as a road with occasional sign points and milestones. Oh my God, rather than as landscapes through which the road has led. And even these signposts themselves do not usually indicate the really significant moments in a person's life. Rather, they point to the events that are conveniently supposed to be significant to the cliches which society has come to consider as the main stations of life. Damn! Thus, the memories of most people come to resemble the stereotyped answers of a questionnaire. While agreeing with this point, chronological critics find it imperative to point out the inadequacy of Satchel's analysis and description of the average adult's poverty of memory. 4. The categories of adult memory in patriarchy are the categories of androcentric memory. The milestones of this artificial memory are male milestones and all too frequently function for women as milestones. Thus, for example, religious and national holidays conjure memories of servitude, shopping, cooking, cleaning, etc. Patriarchal weddings imply the legal and ritualized loss of one's own name and autonomy. Going to work commonly means accepting a dead-end, low-paying, self-erasing job. Birthdays are reminders of aging and subsequent patriarchal devaluation. Oh my God. Oh my God. Birthdays are reminders of aging and subsequent patriarchal devaluation. While the milestones of adult life may be dreary for individual males, they are at the same time a collective boost to the male ego, to the mystic male with whom each man identifies. Thus, Christmas, Easter, Veterans Day, Washington's birthday, a marriage in the family are designed to be uppers for men and downers disguised as uppers for women. Moral outrage at the degradation and erasure of women implied in all of these milestones and millstones can propel a woman to the gateways of metamemory. The quest to remember the qualitatively other, vivid, richly significant experiences of our past is especially urgent for women. For realizing of such realities gives us the strength to exercise the patriarchal categories. A woman who can evoke her childhood experiences of gazing at the moon and stars on clear nights, or lying on the grass, or listening to the sea, or watching the sunset is elementally inspired. When she can recall early experiences of the smell of leaves on an October day, the taste of raspberries at a picnic, the field of sand warmed by the sun, she is empowered. Energized by her own unique elemental memories, she can break through the maze of adult categories. Her reawakened, recharged aura expands its rays, shining through the film of societal imposed schemata, rendering visible the deep connections. Enormous breakthroughs to the spheres of deep memory can be occasioned by the accidental reoccurrence of a body posture. Feminists becoming aware of our bodies in new and ancient powerful ways know that this far from accidental process reconnects us with metamemory. Women who study self-defense in various forms of martial arts, for example, sometimes describe a vivid remembering of bodily integrity and coordination, which they had known as young girls before the heavy indoctrination of adolescence forced feminization upon them. Through the living of physical as well as spiritual intimacy with the other deviant and defiant women, hags experience gestures, postures, acts reminiscent of earliest woman-loving experience with our mothers. Craftswomen who are deeply absorbed in such crafts as pottery, spinning, and weaving sometimes describe the experience of their work in words that evoke metamemory. All right, I'm going to stop there. Okay, so that was a good long read. Okay, so we will be picking up tomorrow on page 357, Deviant Defiant Women as Metamemory Bearing Group. Okay, that sounds exciting. So that is all. Now I got to switch brains and do other stuff. But I appreciate you all for tuning in on this Sunday morning. Let's see. Okay. Channel. Damn. Anyway. My screen is acting up. So I will close with that. Yes, I don't know how long I've been frozen, but anyway, I will close with that. Sorry about that. Close with that, and we can pick up tomorrow. Daly, Elemental Feminist Philosophy by Mary Daly. Pick up tomorrow if you want to tune in. If you don't, I understand. But I will be reading tomorrow, and I will be reading every day until we're finished with this book. We should be finished with this book. Today is the 24th. So we should be finished with this book by the 1st. Okay. So my name is Cassandra Faye Floyd, also known as the Daughter of the Fates. Thank you for tuning in. I'm the founder of the Temple of Evolutionary Emergence. Thank you, Ayan Fix My Life, for your donation. That was very generous. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys tomorrow sometime. I don't know when, because I'm doing these lives right now around my potential schedule to get clients. Okay. All right. See you tomorrow. Peace.